Thank you for everybody who is currently on the line and joining me today for my webinar. And also thank you for giving me an opportunity to actually put on some makeup and feel like I'm kind of back to my old normal. So I think as marketers, we are very much all aware COVID-19 is posing new challenges for marketers when it comes to connecting with our consumers. But what some might not be aware of is that, and that's really what we're going to be exploring today, is how in the wake of COVID, marketers actually have a slew of new opportunities within influencer marketing. So let's kick things off. There are many definitions of what influencer marketing is. This one is mine. Influencer marketing is a collaboration with those who have the ability to entertain, to educate, and to create a sense of community amongst their followers. Now, I want to hone in on three keywords here, and those are entertain, educate, and community. The reason why is that in the wake of COVID, those three things, entertainment, education, and community, I'm going to say them many times throughout this presentation, they've never been more important. And that's because despite things like FaceTime and getting to enjoy now the beautiful weather outside, some people are even getting their first dog. I'm actually one of them. Canadians are feeling more socially isolated than ever before. So it's not surprising that people are genuinely craving more meaningful connections. And that's not surprising. Without physical social interactions, it has left a void for many. And actually, according to the Canadian Mental Health Association, 70% of Ontarians reported that they actually want to experience more meaningful social interactions in their day-to-day life. And that's why they're turning to social media. It's also why time spent on social has significantly increased since the onset of COVID. According to a study done by Mobile Syrup, time spent on social has increased by 70%. And that's really, again, not surprising because 91% of people actually believe in social media's power to connect people. But what are they connecting over? Well, they're connecting over value-add content that, of course, entertains, educates, and creates that sense of community. So yes, we have now come full circle. Yes, I am shamelessly putting a really cute video of a dog in hopes that you are cracking a smile behind your screen. So the fact that we've come full circle shouldn't be a shock to anybody. Of course, we're craving entertainment and education and community during a time when, physically we can't even step out our front door. But when we're restricted from going to bars and to clubs for entertainment, we can't go to school to partake in extracurricular activities that, we're advancing our education. Or when we physically can't come in contact with our family and friends, it's no surprise that people in the wake of COVID are turning to influencers. And that's because they're providing the very thing that we're craving the most. And it's what makes them such a powerful tool in the wake of COVID. And it's why it's such an interesting and, in my opinion, such an exciting time to be in influencer marketing, as there is really an opportunity now more than ever to make a meaningful impact with consumers through this channel. Influencer marketing should be a natural channel for brands in the wake of COVID. Yet, brand deals are actually significantly down. This to me is shocking. According to Business Insider, influencer-sponsored content fell from 35% of all content on Instagram in February to only 4% in April. That is huge. And it's huge because influencer audiences have never been more engaged. Since March, 92% of influencers have maintained or seen an increase in followers during COVID. 80% of influencers are reporting higher engagement, with engagement on Instagram alone seeing a massive increase of 40% amongst users. And 94% of influencers are also seeing an increase in positive sentiment from their followers. And this too is a big deal, and here's why. Now, I'd say in the last 2 to 3 years pre-COVID, the industry at large was dealing with a lack of authenticity when it comes to influencer marketing. And as someone who is ingrained and entrenched in influencer marketing, I have no problem admitting that. We were seeing an increase of skepticism of the influencer industry, which was contributing to a decrease in positive sentiment. And that's both on influencers' feeds and in their comment section, in their DMs, but also very much within the news cycle. Both these articles that are currently on my screen were from late 2019, and they speak to that skepticism. Are influencers' followers fake? And really, should brands even be investing in influencer marketing altogether? But In the wake of COVID, that skepticism is dissipating, and we're starting to see more and more news about the rise of influencer engagement and positive sentiment. And that's because in the wake of COVID, we have gone from this to this. And that's a big difference. And let me talk a little bit more about it. I love influencer marketing, but I also recognize that as it increased in popularity, the industry did start to lose touch with what consumers really wanted to see. And it did become oversaturated with a lot of, I'll call them wannabe influencers that all seemingly were doing the same thing. And that very much was taking photos, showing off their very carefully curated, very inaccessible, and quote unquote, fabulous lifestyles. But since the onset of COVID, it's those influencers that have been getting called out for doing just that. And that's actually been leading to a loss of followers and engagement amongst those specific influencers. Because people now in the wake of COVID are seeking out content that really is closely connected to the realities that people are facing now while in quarantine. And that looks a lot more like this. People not in fabulous outfits, but actually in their pajamas at home. People who are now letting their hair grow out and not afraid to show their grays. And I'm sure if there's parents on this call, I guarantee you can absolutely relate to the third image with influencers dealing with their children while trying to work and trying to go about their day-to-day lives. And that's what influencers are now showing and talking about more honestly. And COVID has essentially, I believe, reset the influencer industry, where influencers are now getting back to what made them so successful in the first place. And that is a humanized approach to content. We're now at a place where we have essentially gone back to basics, and that's a good thing. We're back to our roots and what made this industry boom into a $10 billion industry. That's why as a marketer, I'm struggling. I'm struggling with this dichotomy between the decrease in spend with influencers, but yet the increase of influence that they're seemingly having during COVID. To me, this is mind-boggling. We have a more relevant form of marketing than ever before taking place, exactly where our consumers are spending an increasing amount of time, and yet we're not leveraging it. But that's why I'm excited to actually get into the next part of my presentation, because as we begin to transition into the new normal, we've already started to see the influencer industry evolve based on what I just showed you. And we're going to see it continue to evolve, leading to a new paradigm where there's going to be more opportunities for brands to actually maximize their ROI with influencers as they look to find creative solutions to new challenges. This is the time, for lack of a better word, to get ahead of the curve. And dare I say, yes, I'm a big fan of Friends. In the words of Ross Geller, it is actually time for us as marketers to pivot and to start leveraging influencers in new ways. And those ways are content creation, leveraging your employees as influencers, and live commerce. So I'm sure some of you on the line might be thinking, well, actually, some of these aren't new. And you would be right. A colleague actually said something to me yesterday, and I'm going to share it now here with all of you. COVID is not a change agent. It is an accelerant. And that is absolutely the case with these three opportunities. Yes, some brands were tapping into influencers for the things like content creation and driving commerce before COVID. But what we're seeing now is an acceleration of that adoption of these three things amongst marketers and consumers. And that's why we're going to talk about them in a lot more detail. And to kick it off, I'm going to start with content creation. So creating net new content has become increasingly challenging for marketers. We know video shoots and photo shoots have been canceled or put on pause due to social distancing. And also, budget cuts have been a reality too for marketers. But while social distancing measures are slowly beginning to lift, production's still going to have challenges. And that is going to be a while until the government actually allows for larger gatherings where clients and agency partners, directors and producers can all come together and really congregate on set. And that's why brands are being forced to find new ways of creating content. Now, while most brands are turning to stock images, stock video, animation, there is a bigger opportunity. And that opportunity is to be leveraging influencers. Now, I'm sure for many of you on the line, you've heard the term content creator. And in case you haven't, To me, content creators are a subsect of influencers whose content capture abilities are on par with larger production houses. They treat their work like a craft, creating original content for channels and brands. So that's why, in the wake of our new normal, influencers are going to be the new production houses. Creating content has always been an essential part of influencer marketing. I don't think anyone can dispute that. But I'm not talking about the status quo of influencers creating content for their own channels or even just for social paid ads. I'm talking about marketers viewing influencers as more than just distributors of content and really starting to view them as creative directors, producers, editors, creating content for your own channels, such as perhaps your website, creating content for premium OLV spots, and even broadcast. And this next example, to me, encapsulates best-in-class work during COVID. This is probably where, if we were all in person, I'd ask you, who, by show of hands, who has seen this ad? But I can't really do that in a virtual setting. So instead, I am just going to play it for you.
Hi guys. Notice anything? Yes, I'm at home. Anything else? Look at these grays. So many grays. Okay, I'll be honest. For a second I thought, okay, Grace, I'm ready to see you. I can handle this. But I'm not ready. I am not ready for this much gray. This is happening today. Boom! I've never been this gray in my life. I don't think there's ever gonna be a better before and after. Okay, time to color. I go from back to front, massage it in. Just put it where it's needed. Mine is everywhere. Color's done. It's time to condition. This is my favorite part. I love the smell of this conditioner. I'm not the best blow dryer. I look like Beyonce, but I think I did a pretty good job. Whew. No more gray! No more grays! Oh my God, I'm so happy. Me? Grays? No. There's no place like home. Plus, it's always nice to take a little me time. Self-care is self-worth, because now more than ever, we're all worth it.
All right, well, I don't know about you, but for me, this is a huge departure from the typical TV spot that you're accustomed to seeing from beauty brands. Because let's be honest, nobody's selling hair dye with gray hair. That's the reason why this ad is being hailed by Elle as the most relatable hair commercial possibly ever. And if I were to give my humble expert opinion, I would say that it's ever. This was simply shot in Eva Longoria's bathroom, no fancy set, and no fancy camera crew, no fancy equipment. It was shot on a smartphone with Eva in the director's seat. L'Oreal has always been ahead of the curve when it comes to influencer marketing and they're continuing to take that lead in the wake of COVID, collaborating with Eva. Now, I don't want to mitigate the role of having Eva being a part of that creative process, because I think a lot of brands might see this and say, oh yeah, their creative agency did all of the work. No, Eva was a huge collaborator and contributor to the overall concept and to actually directing the video herself. And it's the reason why the commercial is considered so breakthrough and didn't end up looking a little something like this. Because let's be real, nobody's product is magically making their hair or their dress effortlessly blow in the wind. Maybe I wish, but it's not realistic. It's not attainable. So when we talk about influencers being a part of the creative process, what's really interesting is that in some cases, influencers are actually the creative process, being leveraged to solely capture content for brands to use as ads, not necessarily leveraging their likeness and not necessarily leveraging their channels for distribution. The video that you're seeing right now is actually by our two wonderful content creators who are here with us today, Tyler and Ania. They shot this, but I'm sure for some of you guys on the line, it can be maybe mind-blowing. The fact that, we're at the point where influencers are actually shooting their own content that doesn't even feature them. But that goes to show they do have the chops, they do have the skill set to create premium quality advertisements that brands should be paying attention to. So what does this mean for marketers? Well, first and foremost, it means that we're back to authenticity. We're back to a place where we're able to create humanized, relatable content that's actually going to resonate in a COVID world and is going to continue to resonate in a post-COVID world. It also means that we need to be able to trust the influencers that we work with. And we need to treat them like true content creators, like creative directors. So brands can actually capture their unique voice and the perspective because they do have something interesting to say. That's why they've been able to amass a loyal following after all. And finally, it means that collaboration is an essential component to the process. It can't all be in the hands of the influencer, but it can't all be in the hands of the marketer, of our marketers either, or else you're back to here. Now, not all brands are going to have access to someone like Eva Longoria. And that's okay, because they have access to someone just as powerful, and those are your employees. And that brings us to our next opportunity for marketers. So since the onset of COVID, everyday people are also seeing an increase in both engagement as well as follower size. And now we're all content creators on some level. We might not have tens or hundreds of thousands of followers, but on a grassroots level, we can make an impact. For example, how did all of you guys join this webinar? Diamond didn't go out and grab some influencers or do big fancy media buys or out of home or broadcast to get you guys here. Diamond leveraged their employee network and we spread the word about these webinars, and that's how you guys came to here. And that's why we're all here today. So leveraging Diamond employees were the best way to spread the word, and you can leverage your employees in similar ways. And it's also why brands have been doing this actually pre-COVID. This isn't something new. I can't claim it is. Brands are leveraging their their employees as influencers. And when you think about it, it kind of makes sense. They're already living and breathing your brand. They know your company's do's and don'ts, and they have the opportunity to give your follower or to give their followers a very much a behind the scenes look of your organization that perhaps maybe they wouldn't have seen before. And that's why during as well as post-COVID, this is going to be a huge area for growth. Now, pre-COVID, we saw brands like SoulCycle who really leverage their employees as influencers, as ambassadors for the brand. And if we take this example, a lot of companies hire people that are already very much ingrained in the brand. You know, you're looking for people who emulate your brand values. And that's why a lot of SoulCycle's instructors were already living and breathing the brand. They were promoting their own classes to their followers, engaging with them online, as well as offline in the classes that they taught. And it's because of this connection, they have been able to actually transition into full-fledged influencers. I think Sephora is also a really great brand who is doing employees as influencers great well before COVID too. They did an ad campaign last year for the holidays where they actually casted their store employees to highlight diversity and beauty. Now, the campaign was featured, of course, on social, but it actually went well beyond, where those videos were actually leveraged for premium OLV spots, out of home, and even in print. And this ad campaign was actually praised as best in class within the influencer marketing world, and to be honest, the marketing world at large. And that's why when we think about our new normal, leveraging employees as our influencers and to influence our consumers is a big opportunity. And we're going to continue to see brands leverage them in this way at an accelerated rate, because we're already seeing brands capitalize this right now in the wake of COVID. Now, I really hope I'm going to pronounce this right. Meizhou Dongpo is a Chinese restaurant in China. And just like many of our restaurants here in Canada, they were greatly affected by moving into quarantine. They had to close down and they weren't able to generate revenue. So what did they do? Well, as a way to continue to engage with their customers, they actually put their chefs to work and they went into live streaming. Every night, they live streamed a different one of their chefs, and they had hundreds of chefs. This isn't just a one-off restaurant. This is actually a big chain within China. They leveraged their chefs each chef a different night to create a menu item that was featured on their menu, so consumers could actually make them at home and remember how much they love this brand. So that way, when quarantine is over, they're like, okay, I want another one of those dishes, and then they can go back and keep that connection with the brand. Another example is Starbucks, and this is something that I actually came across my own social feed a couple of weeks ago. I was on TikTok scrolling, and I see that there was actually a mix of both influencer and employee, where an influencer was saying the drink that they really missed getting from Starbucks, and we had a Starbucks employee then showing them how they could make that drink at home. So again, this is a great way to continue to engage with your community. It goes back to my earlier point about education. We're now educating and providing value to audiences at home in terms of how they can make their favorite drink, their favorite Starbucks drink that maybe they're missing in the comfort and safety of their home. So the opportunity for employees to influence consumers truly are endless. And just some of them include awareness initiatives, leveraging your employees to raise awareness of new products, of campaign initiatives that you might have going on. Also for talent acquisition, like I said earlier, typically you want to be hiring people that are living and breathing your brand values. So who better to actually try and bring people in than the people you know who are already doing that, your employees. And finally, and this makes actually a really nice segue into my next and final theme, but your employees do have the power to help you drive commerce. And I'm going to go into this in a bit more detail now. So employees and influencers can absolutely help drive commerce, but there's an evolution that's happening, and it's creating a brand new avenue of e-commerce, and that's called live commerce. I do not have a crystal ball, so I can't say exactly what is going to take place, but what we're seeing take place in China, and even starting to pop up here in Canada, is signaling to me that the future of influencer marketing is going to be leading towards a direction of more direct sales and commerce for brands. Now, it's no surprise in the wake of COVID that retail sales are declining. This is not a new trend. Again, it's an accelerated one. So pre-COVID, retailers were really struggling to generate those in-store sales, with massive brands like Forever 21, Toys R Us filing for bankruptcy. We even saw brands like The Gap closing all of their retail locations in Canada, again, prior to COVID. But now, during COVID, we're seeing even more retailers like J.Crew, Aldo, Neiman Marcus, Reitmans. They're all closing their stores and filing for bankruptcy. So while stores are starting to open back up, which is a good sign, retailers are still going to have struggles though. There's less people who are going to be allowed in stores at a time, which means less sales. There's also going to be a lot of sanitation concerns. You know, if people are trying on clothes and touching different displays, I mean, I personally am not running back to a retail location, and I'm just fine shopping from the comfort of my home. And I think a lot of other consumers are going to have the same sentiment. As we begin to prepare for the new normal, retailers do need to think about new ways to capture that revenue so they can move that stagnant inventory. Now, earlier in the presentation, I talked about how social media as well as Instagram usage is significantly up. Well, so is Instagram Live. Usage for Instagram Live has jumped 70% in April alone. That is huge. 70%. And I'm not surprised. Influencers and celebrities flocked to live at the onset of COVID. And I think personally it was because, you know, a lot of them were, to the slides I showed earlier, putting out very curated, unattainable, aspirational posts. And within the wake of COVID, it was no longer appropriate. So as a means to really try and connect with their audience, they turned to live. And live has now been established as a key way to do those three very important things I said off the top of my webinar, which is to educate, to entertain, and to bring together a sense of community. And it's because of that, savvy marketers are now seeing this as a way to integrate commerce into this emerging channel. And that, in terms of what the new normal looks like, is live commerce. So live commerce is a combination of influencer marketing and live video to create a new channel for driving commerce. And what's really powerful about it is that it's in the moment. The fact that it's in the moment creates urgency, unlike a paid ad that you're going to be served 3, 4, 5, you're not following best practices, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 times. But when you pair the power of live with the power of influencer marketing, having someone aspirational but attainable draw you in through that entertaining or educational content, it creates this perfect storm to push consumers towards conversion in real time. Now, China is about 3 months ahead of us in terms of experiencing COVID, and they are a leading example of live commerce success as a new way for consumers not only to discover new products, but also make purchases. So this example comes to us from China, and it's a small flower shop. Flower farm owner named Li. He did virtually all of his sales offline from his farm. But when quarantine hit, Li was actually at risk of losing his entire business. So what he did was he turned to live streaming influencers in China to see if they could help drive sales. He set up an online shop. He provided the influencers with his expertise, showing them how to create beautiful flower arrangements and go over the properties of the flowers so they could feel prepared to create some really value-add content. Now the results. At the top of the funnel, one of the influencers' broadcasts actually surpassed 1 million viewers. And when we think about the bottom of the funnel, by the end of the harvesting season, he had sold hundreds of thousands of flower units. That's crazy. Li, who once sold almost 90% of his products offline, now that he's post-COVID and is on the other side of the curve, he has actually flipped to selling 90% of them over live commerce and is continuing to use this as a channel to sustain his business. Another best-in-class example is Louis Vuitton. Now, Louis Vuitton actually did something interesting. They didn't just use influencers, they used their employees too. And now we've come full circle on that piece as well. Should have cued the cute dog video here too. Now, Valentine's Day for Louis Vuitton is one of their most successful sale dates. But in the wake of COVID, that sale date was at risk. So what did they do? Louis Vuitton launched a mini online pop-up shop, kind of as a test, which allowed customers to place orders within WeChat, which is a very popular app in China. So employees shared exclusive promotions with customers via their social platforms that drove them to the pop-up. So they had a pre-sale consultation. They also had post-sale customer service, all done through live video. And the best part in terms of how this was successful, despite the crisis, Louis Vuitton saw its online sales double. Yes, it doubled compared to Valentine's Day period last year. And like I said, Valentine's Day period is a key period for them to drive sales and drive revenue. And they were able to double it in the wake of COVID, using their employees to not just drive people to this event, but also help engage them and do customer service and help with consultations all through live. Now, yes, those are in China, but when we look over to North America, we're beginning to see early signs of that happening here too and making its way to Canada. We're seeing more and more of these technology platforms that are enabling more seamless live commerce. Because as I mentioned in the Louis Vuitton example, everything took place within WeChat. They didn't need to go to the brand's website and then start shopping around there. Everything was live, instantaneous, and in the moment. And there are companies now that are enabling us in Canada to start doing just that. So with all of these companies popping up, there is clearly something here for marketers to latch onto. All right, we've gone through a lot. But as you can see, in the wake of COVID, there are now more meaningful ways to maximize the ROI of influencers. Not only can they effectively engage their own audience, there are opportunities for influencers to produce premium quality ads instead of going the route of very expensive production houses. There's also the opportunity to leverage employees to drive sales with those consumers too. And finally, there's opportunities to drive online sales through live commerce. So here are the best practices and key takeaways that I hope you will leave this presentation with. So preparing for offline closures and a slow return to the old normal. While everyone is eager to return back to the life that we used to know pre-COVID, unfortunately, the old normal is not going to be our new normal. Yes, some parts have remained and some will come back, but for the most part, consumer behavior has fundamentally changed. And some parts of that old normal that we cherish might be gone forever. So preparing for what's now and what's next is going to be key, especially when we consider, there's many doctors out there who are predicting a second wave of COVID in the fall and winter months. Hopefully that doesn't happen, but it's best that we're prepared. So engaging influencers early on in the process. This to me is key. We need to remember that our influencers are not are also creators, and they're not just distributors. So getting them to amplify their message is one thing that they know how to do, but having them be a part of your creative team, they have value to provide and they have out of the box thinking to share, and that's only going to enhance your creative. Thinking omni-channel. So engage your sales and distribution teams before you start to think about doing your live commerce. As you'll be working with tech platforms to run your live commerce to actually create more seamless integration into your distribution network, it's going to be really important that you're speaking to them early on so we can have that seamless integration. And finally, we need to ensure that we're investing and equipping employees with the proper technology to enable them to sell. So as I mentioned, stores are beginning to open, but they're going to have much less foot traffic. So it's now time to start looking at the proper technology. We're actually partnering now with one of those brands that I showed on a previous slide, ShopThing, and we're now actually finding solutions for our clients in terms of how they can start to take advantage of live commerce. So to wrap this up, COVID is not a change agent. It is an accelerant. I said this early on and I wanted to say it again. The trends that are taking place now, they're not new. They were nascent, they were being embraced by some, but now in the wake of COVID, their adoption is accelerating and the signals are showing that they're here to stay. There are early movers who have started to embrace these changes like L'Oreal, like Starbucks, like Louis Vuitton, and they're thriving. So the question that I want to ask to you is, will you? It's not too late to be ready for what's coming. And if we embrace it, then we as marketers, we can all be ahead of the curve. Thank you. Thank you, Tyler and Ania, for joining us. I'm so excited to have you guys here.
Thanks for having us. We're excited. We watched your whole presentation and we were like, yes, yes, yes. We loved it so much. Notes. Yeah.
Amazing. All right. Well, while you guys enjoyed my content a lot, I think that our audience on the line is really going to be excited to hear what you guys have to say. It's not every day that they get to kind of hear the influencer perspective, and that's why we really wanted to do this. So to kick things off, are you guys able to quickly share just a little bit about your business as content creators, what it is you do on a day-to-day basis?
Yeah, so Tyler and I met and really started working together right on the onset about, how long ago was this? 10 years ago, 10-ish years. Yeah, we were rounding up. He was a photographer prior to us meeting, and I was coming in from modeling, fashion, but also accounting backgrounds. So we sort of combined everything that we knew and started a business together. Initially, the business was production. We were shooting a lot of stock photography, selling stock, but I also had a blog, my fashion blog, and then it sort of slowly evolved into what we're doing now, which is we have a photo and video production house. Tyler has a YouTube channel and an Instagram that he monetizes. And I have my Instagram and my blog still, which I also work with clients on. So that's sort of like the three arms of our business. Yeah.
Amazing.
Tripod.
And I mean, speaking of then the tripod of that business, how has COVID affected all three of those legs, or has it? Would love to hear a little bit more.
I mean, it definitely has, especially at first. As soon as things started picking up in the news, everything slowed down for us. So, at first, pretty much everything was immediately canceled. And gradually things have been ramping back up in a different way. A few clients kind of kept on a similar course, especially in the tech space, which is what a lot of my content is around. Some of that stuff just wasn't even interrupted. It kept going exactly
Yeah.
the same way. I think the bigger shift has been in the content that Ania
Fashion
works
and
on,
lifestyle, for sure. Like, it was very interesting to see the different genres sort of working their own ways, in obvious reasons. Like, obviously fashion is, there's a lot of luxury involved, and like showing off.
And people aren't going outside.
People aren't going outside, people can shop in stores. So yeah, that was a big thing. But then all of a sudden people are also buying all these things to entertain themselves with, like you were saying. So yeah, it was very interesting to see everything sort of change and shift. And a lot of some of the projects were canceled, some were postponed, some projects were obviously reliant on events like festivals and things, but then the ones that were not picked right back up, and I think people got a little more comfortable with the situation. I think it took a second, but
on the production side, obviously everything was canceled at first, and now it's been ramping up, but in interesting ways that are adapting to the new realities. So.
Yeah.
And do you want to share actually some of those interesting ways? I'm sure our audience would be curious to hear the
Sure.
Yeah, now it's a lot of, I mean, social distancing is on the minds of everybody. So all the productions that are happening are very mindful of social distancing. We have clients who are specifically calling it out and making sure that, you know, things are shot on separate days so talent doesn't overlap. And yeah, just that is, I think, the biggest.
Well, or
thing.
some of the most interesting ones are what you touched on, that finally something we've been pitching to clients for a long time, but there's more of them coming to us saying like, oh, you already are able to produce these things. So now it's being, the stuff that we might otherwise be shooting just for social is becoming part of their campaigns. So, you know, there's a few that we're working on that traditionally probably would have been social campaigns. And I don't think we're even posting anything from it.
No.
We're just shooting a whole bunch of, you know, kind of
assets,
commercial/social assets, and they're going to use them however they want to. And we've been trying to convince clients of that we worked with clients a little bit, but all of a sudden everybody seems to be getting it at the same time.
Yeah. The clients that knew us from the influencer side, that already knew that we were doing production on a separate level, were already hiring us to do these things, but we are now having new people coming and just sort of assuming that we can do it. And we're like, oh yeah, actually this is totally something that we have in our toolbox. Yeah. So
that's great. So you're essentially living and breathing the trend that we're seeing. So that's awesome.
Yeah, it's good.
Now, for the marketers on the call who are very accustomed to executing influencer programs, what in your mind are the key elements that make an influencer partnership with a brand successful? Because I'm sure that, you know, we've all seen some horror stories out there or seen some not so great content, which sometimes, you know, put some fear in marketers' eyes. But I think there are some key ingredients that definitely will help make a partnership successful. And I'd love to hear your thoughts on that.
Yeah, for sure. And I think you also talked about this a lot, and trust is a really huge thing. I think for us, especially, sometimes it's hard to see the way that, you know, marketers treat us as influencers, because we have been doing it for so long. We've started, you know, I started my blog in 2010. So I was seeing the industry evolve from the start. And I think that, to me, it's so obvious. It's like, well, of course you can trust me. We know how to create these images and these videos and all these assets for you. And we understand what the audience wants. We understand what the client wants, especially also with our backgrounds prior to this, with me having worked with brands on a completely different level before, and Tyler as well through photography. So it's hard sometimes to not get that trust from people. You know, on the flip side, we do understand that there are creators for sure that you have to hold their hand throughout the things that they do. But for us, it has a lot to do with trust. If you're hiring us, you've seen our content, you know the work that we do, our portfolio being sort of our platforms. You know what we are capable of. So give us more freedom. And I mean, like, you are already giving us a lot of freedom, because you're not here. Like with a lot of our production stuff, the client's always, you know, on set, and they want to contribute to everything that is being created. But on the influencer side, you don't have that control. So you already have to let go. So I think the trust is sort of like the next step that you have to take.
Yeah, and I think some of the biggest horror stories we've seen where it doesn't work out for the marketer, because it can go both ways. Sometimes it's the challenges on our sides, and obviously sometimes it's the challenges that the final product isn't what the client was hoping for. I think the most oftentimes we've seen and heard about that, it's that it was not a great match to begin with. It probably was never really going to work out because either the influencer didn't really connect with what the product and the message was supposed to be, or they lacked the professionalism to be able to pull off what was being attempted. It's usually a mismatch from the beginning that doesn't work out.
And a lot of the times influencers will be chosen based on the numbers because they have a big following or they get a lot of likes or whatever it may be, without actually being vetted for, do they fit with the brand's messaging, with the whole vibe,
I agree. And, that's why for us, the vetting process and the influencer identification process is so important for the clients that we work with, because to your point, their Instagram feed or whatever their social platform of choice is their portfolio. So we have the opportunity to understand their capabilities, what they can do with their content, their writing style, and it's essentially a casting to figure out who is the right influencer to actually execute, in collaboration, that joint vision.
Yeah, I was about to say, I mean, the ideal situation is a similar analogy to movie casting. If you cast the right actor, you don't need to micromanage and direct them through every single thing. They just inhabit the character, and you can't imagine it being anyone else. Hopefully, that's what the relationship becomes, is that it just fits, and you don't need to worry about every detail because it's flowing naturally.
Yeah,
that's the goal.
Sometimes we have, I think this is touching on maybe one of the coming up questions, but sometimes we have a challenge where, we will be chosen for a campaign and we will be told, because we love your voice, we love your content, whatever it may be. But then we are met with this, okay, but this is what we want you to say, and this is how we want it to look. And here are examples of exactly how we want it to look like. And so the creativity sort of gets taken out of this project all of a sudden, because you are steered in a direction that really doesn't give you much room for creativity.
A gap between that desire to, I think the client can feel like, yeah, we do want your authentic voice, but it can be really hard to resist still getting in there and transitioning it gradually from an authentic piece of content to what can become an ad.
Yeah, and for us as creatives, and I think a trend that hopefully we will be seeing now, this post-COVID thing, is that the sameness that we have been seeing on Instagram so much, everybody looking the same, everybody wearing the same thing, talking about the same products. But as creatives, we really thrive on being able, we want to differentiate ourselves from others. We want our content to look different from other people. We want to be able to have an opportunity to voice our uniqueness,
Fair enough. And actually, I think some of those answers that you just provided are probably going to be encapsulated in this next question. But I think a lot of marketers have misconceptions, about working with influencers. And I think some of that's probably due to, as you guys were just saying, and as I touched on in my presentation, kind of this oversaturation of a lot of the sea of sameness within influencer marketing, and I think there are a ton of content creators who are trying to step out of that, and who are creating really meaningful content that does touch on those three pillars I spoke about: education, entertainment, and community. So what are those misconceptions that you think marketers have about influencer marketing?
Yeah, I mean, I think sometimes there can be an overemphasis on only numbers without observing the actual connection with the audience, or the quality of the content, or how well it will represent them. I mean, so in my case, a good example is I do general technology, but I happen to touch on creative production a lot, like filmmaking, photography. So when a small audience sees me talk about a specific piece of filmmaking gear, it may seem like a relatively small audience, but all of those people are the ones that are likely to open up their wallets for whatever is being promoted. So just having that awareness of the connection between, like what are the numbers, who are the people watching, how likely are they to follow through with the message that they're receiving. So yeah, just not being too narrow-minded about exactly which metrics you're looking at.
Or niches even. I find that challenging sometimes, is people assuming that, she can only do fashion, or she can only do beauty or lifestyle or whatever. And it's always sort of like a tricky thing for us to navigate, and being able to tell people like, no, people follow us and people want to have conversations with us because we are well-rounded people. My hope is that I can relate to my audience on many different levels. I don't want somebody to think that I am not attainable because I'm a model or I have access to clothes or whatever. I still go to the same restaurants, and I still use the same products, travel to the same places, think about money in the same ways that you do. So there is definitely room for one influencer to have a very broad ability to talk about many different things.
A range of skill sets.
Yeah. I would definitely agree. And actually, at least in my experience, I find that Instagram stories is kind of the place where you get to see more of, oh, someone wants to join my webinar.
Oh, come on in.
Surprise guest.
We'll ignore that. And hopefully they don't ring again. But yeah, I think Instagram stories is a place where I'm starting to see more of that happen. Like Ania, I think it was actually on your channel that I saw a couple of weeks ago. You were actually talking about when you were an accountant, and talking about the importance of finance and money in a COVID world. Like that maybe wouldn't show up as an Instagram post, maybe it would, and maybe it does feel off niche, but I'm sure you got a lot of great engagement off of that story, because it is something that is so relatable, and it's something that makes sense to everyone in a COVID world. We're all wondering and worrying about finances.
Yeah, it was a big thing for me. Actually, I had created a whole series on my IGTV talking to other creatives and business owners about money, because of my accounting background, because also I think that, just having had experience in that field and seeing how different people interact with money, and just on my own conversations, seeing how my fellow, influencers or other business owners interact with it, I really wanted to talk about it. And I've been thinking about doing it for such a long time, just sort of giving a glimpse into these private conversations that I have with people. And I thought that this was a perfect opportunity to do that, because now this is going to be on everybody's minds. And if it's not, it definitely should be.
So I'm going to actually pivot back to Nicole. And actually open it up to some audience questions for both you guys and myself.
We have a couple of audience questions, and we didn't want to miss them. And so I am just going to read these verbatim. The first one is this: are you finding clients less willing to engage with influencers they haven't used in the past and sticking to tried and true partners?
I'm happy to start and kick it off. I'm actually finding a mix, and I think it depends on the brand, and I think it depends on risk appetite. We have some clients who feel a lot more comfort in working with influencers and content creators that we've worked with in the past, because we've been able to demonstrate success and ROI with those influencers. And we have other brands, and this is really a strategy that I do recommend. Yes, we always want to continue working with influencers that we've had successful partnerships with in the past. Really, the underpinning of the influencer world is influencer relations. That's what we used to call it back when I was in PR. And it really is about the relationships you build. So if you're fostering a relationship, not just with that influencer, but also with their audience, why wouldn't you want to continue? But at the same time, you want to make sure that you're also reaching new audiences. So continuing to build on that on those established partnerships that you have, and continuing to broaden that network is going to be really important to ensure that you're showcasing different perspectives and ways that content can come to life and can resonate with different consumers and different audiences, and B, obviously expand the actual size of that audience.
That's actually something that we have been talking about with Tyler. Is one of the assumptions, I think, clients working with influencers on one-off projects versus a long-term relationship. Like Brooke, you said, long-term relationships are important and really meaningful. And for us, it's the same thing. And I think that there's definitely room for marketers to explore that. I think that we work every long-term relationship that we've had, a long-term project, has always been more successful than those one-off.
Yeah, there's a
sort of
few. I
things.
mean, especially I'm thinking of some apps that I've been working with for a while that, you know, keep coming back every 3 months or so, or regular sponsors on the podcast, and they become associated with me, and like the whole audience knows, like, this is, you know, who they know that I like it because I keep talking about it for years now. So
and it
I
also
think
lends
really
itself
helps.
to the long-term success of that promotion or partnership, because people don't always respond immediately to things. There will be moments where they will come back, or come back often even, to look at you know, a specific brand or product or whatever it may be.
Got it. Thank you. That was very insightful. It makes a lot of sense. So thank you, Brooke. Thank you, Tyler. Thank you, Ania. This was really great. If there are any additional questions, please send them to me directly. That's nglickman@experiencediamond.com. Have a lovely day. Thanks, everybody. Bye-bye.